Hello, Namaskar viewers. I am Sanjeev Pandya welcoming you to this week's edition of the Business Talk with AJ right here on ITV Gold. This weekly show brings you all the latest that you need to know from the world of business. When I say world of business, yes, US business stories as well as global business stories that we bring it to you in this show, the Business Talk with AJ, every week, brought to you by Science CPS Services, a complete professional accounting firm located in the state of New Jersey. Multiple locations. They can guide you, advise you, and also be with you in every single step of the way, from starting the company to even having company financials done and the personal or corporate tax returns done. They have on hand their trained and experienced CPAs and accountants to tackle your issue immediately. And in case if you are in IRS audit, they can also help you out. Their track record is absolutely solid, and that's why they are one of the best CPA firms in our South Asian community. With that note, I'd like to welcome Mr. AJ Kumar of Science CPS Services to the show once again. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you, Sanjeevji. Thank you for the kind introduction.
You're very welcome. Let's move on. As always, we begin the news in this business talk with AJ, mostly with mortgage stories, either mortgage stories or stock market story. But today we're going to begin with the mortgage story as mortgage rates are climbing higher and higher. It's already upwards of 7.5%. It all depends upon your FICO, your income, what kind of house and where are you buying it. There are many factors to consider to get the mortgage rate. But the average mortgage rate right now in the US is around 7.5%.
Absolutely, Sanjeevji. You rightly said. Right now, the mortgage rates are highest that this country has seen in last 23 years. This rate, 7.57% that we're talking about in today's episode, this rate was there in 2020 last time when we saw this high rate. As you know, the prime rate is 8.5%. Inflation is still there. And the worst part is, with the low inventory in the market, the housing prices are not coming down, or they are not coming down as much as you would expect them to come down when we are talking about such high interest rate. So typically the interest rate increases, the housing prices starts to go down just because the affordability goes down for people. But right now, with low inventory, high interest rate, housing prices are still very high. So I wouldn't be too surprised if in next 6 months, not immediately, 6 months to 9 months, we may have a situation where we have a big burst. This housing bubble may come down to burst in a situation when people are buying the houses at 7.5% interest rate, an absurd price, paying more than the asking price, which they will realize in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, that they can't afford these houses.
Well, I think borrowers are going to think twice before they make the purchase.
And
One
they should.
is that the property prices are so high. So if property is listed, let's say for example, $250,000, there are borrowers who are paying as much as $20,000, $30,000 more than the asking price.
Absolutely.
So one is that they are paying high price. Second is that interest rates are so high. Now let's look at the third scenario, that they will say, all right, I've got the money, I qualify for the mortgage and I'm okay. I want to buy the house and I need the house. Now you sit down and think, eventually rates going to come down. Now, it's going to take 2-3 years for rates to come down for that borrower to consider refinancing.
Absolutely.
Right? And then till then, are they willing to pay that kind of interest rate and a mortgage interest? Yes, but it will only happen to certain borrowers who are in that situation that they need to purchase that property, they need to move in, whether it's a primary residence or change of place or whatever it is. And that percentage, that gap is so narrow, and that's why the mortgage industry outlook for, I would say, 3 to 6 months looks very, very bleak.
Yes, people have to be careful, especially the buyers. If you're a seller, we strongly advise you to sell it as soon as you can. Even if you have to take a little cut, please try selling it as soon as possible.
Yep.
If you are
and
a
you
buyer,
better have a good reason to sell it.
if you're a buyer, you want to take a step back, ask yourself if this is the right thing for you to do. Can you really afford it?
True.
The housing prices are going to come down in next 6 months, next 1 year. Can you wait for 1 year? Can you rent the property right now and not buy it? So ask yourself, make sure you analyze your situation before getting into such a deal.
All right, now let's talk about consumer prices. Consumer prices have been very steady. So that means, okay, consumer prices, affects inflation. Now, if it's been very steady, that means inflation has been steady also. And AJ, I think Fed is going to look into it come December when the time comes in whether to raise interest rate or not. Fed is going to look into it to see is it still worthwhile to raise the interest rate maybe 25 basis points in order to control inflation. So this thing could happen.
You are 100% right. So CPI, Consumer Price Index, turned out to be 0.4% higher than the prior quarter in third quarter, which is roughly 3.7% higher for this quarter compared to the last year's in Q3 in the third quarter, which is very high for this market. And what CPI increase indicates that the inflation is still too high. We have been expecting in the last meeting, in September meeting, that federal government wouldn't increase the rate, but they did. So now we are at a situation, forget about the rate decrease. We are suspecting with this high inflation if the federal government is going to be increasing the rate yet again. So we are not talking about the decrease in the rate. So they may not increase the rate, they may leave it as is, but the fact remains the inflation is still too high. The inflation that the federal government is trying to curb is still on the higher side.
All right, it's on a higher side, and this episode happens to be talking about the stories which is on a higher side. We talked about mortgage, we talked about CPI, and now let's bring in a little bit of news from the fast food industry. If you really like to go to Chipotle, or if Chipotle happens to be one of your favorite fast food joints, be ready to pay a little bit higher for that, your favorite burrito or salad, whatever you want. 4 to 6% is the price increase. Chipotle is looking into it after pausing it for such a long time.
So there were talks about, if you remember last year as well, around the same time, and they were planning to increase it, but then they put a pause for 1 year. Now during this time, and they're thinking about the next year's number, next year's budget, the proposal came back again. So they're planning to increase 4 to 6% increase, which may not be very high, but from a consumer perspective, everything adds up. When you have gas prices at $5 a gallon, and then everything is increasing 4%, 6%, and your salary is not, that's when it creates a situation when it becomes unaffordable very soon.
That's
the good
right.
thing.
And if your salary is not increasing, you might as well take the recording of the show to your boss.
Absolutely.
And then have them see it and then say, look, this is what's happening. Can I have a raise?
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's on a lighter note. Now, when you go to Chipotle and have your favorite burrito or salad, obviously you're going to go for soft drink also. And when you go for soft drink, when you go for Pepsi as your favorite soft drink, guess what? Pepsi has beat Wall Street estimates.
And I'm glad you brought it up. Pepsi is doing very well. Think
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
Chipotle is forced to increase the price. Coke is doing very well.
Yes.
So what we are telling you, the margins that these soft drinks have are far more than the margins that you have on the food itself. So Chipotle, the good thing that goes in this fast food industry's favor, a lot of people are avoiding to go out and sit in a proper sit-down restaurant because that's seen as more expensive. So Chipotle provides a middle layer where it's not as fast food as McDonald's or Burger King, but yet it's still fast food and reasonably priced.
Exactly. And you don't have to give that much of a tip versus sitting down in the restaurant. So that you
in
save
many
the money.
restaurants, but the amount of tip you can give,
Yes.
you can buy the full food in Chipotle.
Correct, absolutely. All right. So Pepsi is doing well, and Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola investors must be very pleased to see about 38% return
In
over
last 5 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As a
So that
compound
means
interest.
The future looks good. Pepsi doing well, Coca-Cola doing well. Now, all these things considered, of course, you're going to need a car to go to the places, right? And when you talk about car, why not talk about battery charged car, EV
Absolutely.
car? When it comes to battery charged car, the only car comes to your mind is Tesla.
Yeah,
but there
absolutely.
are other cars also. The
Every
EV.
manufacturer has an
Yes.
electric car now.
But Tesla is the one that people will think, oh,
They are the brand leader. They started this whole
absolutely,
concept.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they are kind of staple to the EV batteries vehicles, Just like when you think of beer, you think of Budweiser. When you think of soft drink, you think of Coca-Cola.
Xerox.
Huh?
Xerox.
Yeah.
People talk about, can you make a Xerox
Can you
out of
make
it?
a
They're not
Xerox?
saying make a
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah.
Even though you see a lot of copy machine.
Correct.
Canon has a copy machine. Everybody has a copy machine. But can you make a Xerox out of it? It becomes a brand name out of
Yep.
it.
So when you have this electric vehicle, of course, you need a charger, and there is this company which is very, very, very famous called ChargePoint. ChargePoint initially got a big investment, $330 million or something. So that happened, and then they went out and then got in a second now $200 million, 200 plus. But that made the stock price go down about 8%.
Right. So they recently went in the market to collect more money because they wanted to invest more money into the charging station, into the appliances, into the machinery. So they got $232 million from the market by issuing new shares. Typically, when a company issues new shares, their stock price goes down. So for ChargePoint, the stock price went down by almost 8%. But I believe it's just temporary, just because this money is being invested back in the company. Soon enough, you will see the results coming out of this extra investment, and you will see the share price coming back for ChargePoint.
There you go. So that's the story in our first half. When we come back in the second half, after this messages, we're going to bring you a story where Samsung is going to be investing big time into EV battery factory in the USA. That's all coming up right after this messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the second half of the Business Talk with AJ. In this show, we bring you all the latest business stories that you really need to know. Maybe you have come across, or maybe you may not have come across, but I guarantee you there will be a story or two that you did not come across, because we bring you those stories that you may have missed, and we're happy to do so. The Business Talk with AJ right here on TV Gold. Moving on to the second part of the show, let's talk about before the break, we talked about the EV vehicle and EV vehicles ChargePoint issue, that how they have raised the funds and now they raise it again, but the stock prices has been affected. Now EV vehicles are becoming so popular and really catching everyone's attention. The sale of EV vehicles in 2023 has been even higher in this 10 months than 2022. So it is increasingly going faster than they expected. So here we have Samsung and Stellantis. They're teaming up to invest heavily into EV plant in Indiana.
Absolutely, Sanjeevji. So they are trying to come up with a battery plant. It's going to be a multi-year project, but they are estimating $3.2 billion, not million, $3.2 billion investment combined by Stellantis as well as Samsung that we are talking about. So $3.2 billion of investment coming up in Indiana into battery plant for the electric vehicles. That shows you the electric vehicles are here to stay, and if large companies like Samsung are investing billions of dollars, you will see lot of people using electric vehicles, lot of people coming up with the electric cars.
All right, so this is a one investment, but before that, with the automakers, they need to make sure that they resolve the issue with United Auto Workers, known as UAW. You may have seen it in the news somewhere. So now UAW, United Auto Workers, are targeting strike against Ford's Kentucky truck plant. Now this is the plant, this is Ford's truck plant, which is one of the most profit-making plants. And now UAW, union is reaching out to the employees at that plant, and there could be a strike at the plant soon.
Absolutely. This UAW story is really serious and getting tricky. So if you look at it, take a step back, this strike has been going on for quite some time now, for weeks now. General consumer haven't really seen the impact, Sanjeevji, yet in the market, because there is always some inventory at the showroom, there is some inventory in the shipping line. But eventually, in a month or two, when the factories are closed, new vehicles are not being produced, this will increase the value, the selling price for the vehicles, and then it will create a situation early next year when all these auto companies will be under pressure to reach the goal to sell enough number of cars.
Yes.
Then you will see especially high discounts early next year. So you will see a jump up in price, and then once the strike opens up, give or take 6 to 8 weeks after the strike opens up, you will see large sales coming up. But the story is Ford is negotiating very hard with UAW, and their plant in Kentucky will have a strike, the Ford truck. They have 8,700 workers over there, and that plant is also going on strike.
There you go. And meantime, General Motors, let's bring in the news of that. They were able to resolve this strike issue with their employees in Canada. So Canadian employees and GM, they have reached an agreement, but in the US, they have yet to reach an agreement.
I think the negotiations are going on, especially when you have a multi-party negotiation. UAW is negotiating with Ford, with GM, with Chrysler. It creates a situation that everybody has to come on board, and if one company offers something, the auto union would expect the other companies to follow the same suit, and that becomes really, really tricky for all these auto manufacturers.
Yeah, and it's not only auto, we also should bring out a Hollywood story, because
Absolutely.
Hollywood actors, the screenwriters and everybody, they have been on a strike since July of 2023. And apparently there has not been any significant progress made. If there was a little progress made, one of the associations reached an agreement, and that's when last week we started to see late night shows, live, and that happened. But many TV projects and movie projects are on hold because of this strike, Hollywood strike.
Absolutely,
actor strike.
absolutely, rightly said. So when you have the actors, union, studios in Hollywood striking, then you have on the other hand UAW, the auto workers striking. Consider a situation. What impact does it have on other related businesses? Say, for example, Delta, the airline where their main hub is in Michigan, around Detroit, and that's where all the auto manufacturing facilities are. When people are not going to fly, there is nothing new entertainment coming up, auto union is on strike, is creating a larger impact, not just on the auto union or on the Hollywood or the studios only, is creating a larger impact on Delta Airline, on other airlines, and as well as the whole industry connected together.
Absolutely. They're asking for more wages. And now, one of the main reasons, AJ, is why they are on a strike, and their issue is very, very serious. It has to do with AI. Artificial intelligence. They think because of artificial intelligence, their jobs are in jeopardy, and they might be losing their jobs, and they want to make sure they are rewarded well enough.
Well, I think it's the same situation. When the computer came in, a lot of people thought, rightly and wrongly, that computers will take over and a lot of people will lose the job. And it's true, a lot of people did lose the job. At the same time, computer itself created a lot of new opportunity. So I'm not expecting anything different from AI, even though a lot of people will lose the job.
Correct.
But AI by itself will create a lot of new opportunities as long as you are agile enough, as long as you are smart enough to adapt with the coming technology, you'll be fine.
Okay. And that's a good to know. Anyway, so here you have UAW auto workers. They are asking for a raise. They are on a strike. And we just talked about Hollywood actors and screenwriters. They are on a strike because they are asking for higher compensation, everything. I think, AJ, it's time to have a lottery winner who could win $1 billion lottery.
Absolutely.
And take some $700 million home, and that happened in California. Why in California? Everyone's asking that question, that why second time in a row the $1 billion lottery winner is from California.
And the funny thing is, California does not have income tax on lottery winning. If it was in New Jersey, the same person would have paid millions of dollars
Really?
on the income tax.
Okay.
So the lottery winning ticket, I'm sure you know, was $1.76 billion. If taken as an annuity, if you want to take a lump sum, is 775, give or take, $1 million. You do pay 37% income tax to the IRS, to the federal government, but being in California, the winning ticket, there is no state tax. So California is still good for the winner. I mean, if you have a choice, California is the way to go.
There you go. All right, now let's bring in the news from around the globe, the business news related. Now it's a business news, but anyway, TikTok is one of those business making apps, are very, very popular, has hundreds of millions of followers and users all over the world. Now, because of this tense situation in Israel and Gaza, I think they have put some kind of restriction on TikTok, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of responsibility falls on people like you and me, that we do not create such misinformation in the market. We do not create panic in the market. I mean, a lot of these TikTok, YouTube, a lot of these social media websites are out there where there is no filtering happening. There is no checking happening.
Correct.
Anybody can post anything. Now, how do you control that people are not spreading hate, people are not spreading misnews? We have to make sure we take collective responsibility, and that's why the system is trying to curb those hate
So
news.
European Union wants to have some kind of control over it,
I
but
think
AJ, this is
eventually.
not going to go too far, I'm telling you, because there are certain sites right? They cannot control live broadcasting, live video of it. There's nothing that can be
You're-
done.
you're
In the
right.
past, we have seen some violence. We have watched it live on a social media.
You're 100% right. Eventually, it may not be tomorrow, but
Correct.
eventually there has to be a system. There has to be some sort of tracking, some sort of responsibility checking as who is posting, what are they posting, and who is taking the responsibility for this post.
Okay,
I mean,
now that's a good one. Let's move on. Who is taking the responsibility of this news? Paytm is one of the most popular apps in India right now to make payments and everything else, right? Makes the life everything so easy. Once you have a bank account, you download the app and then everything is easy. Now, Reserve Bank of India, they have imposed 5.39 crore penalty on Paytm.
You know what? I'm happy to see this news.
Okay.
I have seen this news from the federal government all the time. I have seen this type of news by the European government all the time because a big company did not follow certain rules and now the federal government or the European Union came out and put some penalty against a big company. We have seen it against Wells Fargo. We have seen it against a lot of banks. This is the first time RBI is going out to put a 5 crore plus penalty against Paytm, which is not a good news for Paytm, but it's a good news in general. It shows that Paytm has to be responsible, and the penalty is all about KYC, know your customer. So now, looking at the penalty, and the penalty is not a large amount when it comes to Paytm. It's 5 crore, but it's not a huge amount when it comes to Paytm.
Hopefully, they'll get the things in the order.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. Let's quickly move on as we have just a little over a minute left. So after Paytm story, now let's go to the World Cup 2020-23 story. This money-making event, which is right now happening in India, and all those 10 teams are in India and the matches are in the progress. Australia, surprisingly, they have lost 2 games. First game they lost against India, and recently they lost a game against South Africa as we go into the filming of the show. India won 2 games, so one against Australia, of course, and the other one against Afghanistan. So that's what's happening. Now the remaining matches are getting exciting and very exciting. Obviously, one of the oldest rivalries between India and Pakistan will be taking place. We'll see what happens. Everyone's keeping their fingers crossed. And some of the matches are, South Africa is playing so well. They've been scoring like
Absolutely.
300 runs and they scored 400 runs. You know,
They made a joke out of Australia.
Exactly.
I mean, it was completely one-sided match.
Yes. You know, to me, Australia looked like, they picked the players at the last minute. It was like plane was on a runway and was just getting takeoff. All right, you come on in, we need you. Yeah, we need you. You're available. Come on in. And they rushed and rushed. They got the players. They've been underperforming, whether it's a
Absolutely.
batting, whether it's a bowling, whether it's a fielding.
They
everything.
missed 7 catches in
Yes,
South
I'm
Africa. I
telling
mean,
you.
it's amazing.
They picked the players at the last minute. I have no idea. This is what not expected from Australia, because Australia is not only they are super cricket team and super players, but they are the trophy hungry players.
Absolutely.
That is one country always wants to win every single trophy, and you don't see that hunger, you don't see that excitement, you don't see that body language.
See, the biggest surprise for me with this World Cup was West Indies not qualifying
Yes.
to even
I
play.
told you, huh?
But now, Australia, the
Yes.
way they are playing, it seems like another West Indies.
Yeah.
They're losing so badly. In the last match with India, they had 3 wickets on 0 runs.
There you go.
And they still lost the match in 40 overs.
Yes. All right. So we're going to continue to bring you these World Cup updates. With that note, we come to the end of this week's The Business Talk with AJ right here on ITV Gold. AJ, thank you so very much
Absolutely,
for your time.
Sanjeev. Thank you.
And I am Sanjeev Pandya, wishing you all happy and good cricket watching days ahead. Until we meet again, so long.
Thank you.